because I knew my brothers, my two elder brothers, were going to school. I heard about residential school. When they told me I had to go to residential school. I was happy. I wanted to go in.
In 2016, according to government statistics, children under the age of 4 made up nearly half of all foster children in Canada, despite being only 7% of the total population. Though this is not the only disproportionate statistic that identifies with Indigenous people, a topic I will eventually bring up. But first, I find it is imperative we locate the origin that explains why Indigenous children are overrepresented in child welfare. It all began during the residential school era that lasted for about 130 years. Schools where Indigenous children face the horrors of physical, mental, and sexual abuse as a cause of colonization. By the 1930s, the government had realized that with increasing costs of running those schools, their goals of assimilation were no longer being met, as the Indian problem persisted. And so these schools were later used as orphanages and child welfare institutions, in a way preparing for a different approach to the Indian problem, the 60 Scoop, which caused 20,000 children to be taken from their homes and placed into foster care. The 60 Scoop was nothing more than a factor contributing to the cultural genocide of Indigenous people. It remains an unsolved crisis. Today's child welfare system is just another mask, another approach to the Indian problem. The reason this issue continues to live is because the government underfunds child welfare, health, and social services. The failure in funding results in poverty and poor housing, all which are things that contribute to children being placed in foster care.
For Timmins, James Bay, order.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister spent nearly $1 million fighting Indigenous kids in court. And now his ministers are blaming the provinces, but documents show that federal programs are so underfunded that Indigenous parents actually have to give their children away to provincial foster care in order to get help. There's something fundamentally wrong in a nation where Indigenous families have to give their children away while we have a finance minister who can't remember that he owns a villa in the south of France. So will this Prime Minister call off his lawyers, stop blaming the provinces, and end this system of child-focused apartheid in Canada? Do it now!
Right.
The real problem is that First Nations, child and family service agencies are incentivized because when a kid is placed in the foster care system, costs to keep them there are reimbursed by INAC, or referred to as Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada. And these agencies later see the foster care system as the solution. Now, back to that one point I mentioned earlier. Child welfare is not the only area that holds disproportionate statistics. It also persists in the prison system. According to Statistics Canada, of the 7% Indigenous population, 27% of that population account for the federal prison inmates. So purely based on Statistics Canada, of the Indigenous population, 20% are in prison and about 50 are in child welfare. Is this a modernized version of internment? Indigenous people are overrepresented in the criminal justice system due to the government's framework of domination and failure to acknowledge their mistakes, which thus allows them to be made again, as history is doomed to repeat itself.
Well, I always hear about that word reconciliation, but I never understand that word. Even if someone explained it to me, it just goes one ear and out the other. So I don't know what that word means, reconciliation. There's ways of maneuvering around that big word, that reconciliation word. They can't even shake your hand, they can't even hug you, they don't want to do anything with you, to show family love. It's not there. It's just two strangers meeting together and saying, yes, how are you? And that's it. You don't even bother to answer, how are you? Because you know they don't care, how are you? So no use trying to answer that question. So I just said, I'm fine, thank you. You know they don't care.